And I think today's message comes at the time that God would have it come. Listen to the words from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. There it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, 'Let there be light.' And there was light. And God saw the light that was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day." This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Have you ever noticed how little kids really like to have night lights? Night lights ease our navigation around the house when it's dark out. We put them in hallways, we put them in bathrooms, we put them in our kitchens. Maybe even we have more than one in the hallway just in case you have to turn a corner and you have troubles navigating in the darkness. Night lights help us to feel not afraid or lost. The truth is, many of us fear the darkness. We fear not being able to see or not knowing where we are or where we should be going. We don't have very good association with the darkness. It's something that we fear. It's why we say things like, "I feel like I'm in the dark on this." In times we don't feel like we know something. When we feel in the dark, we feel vulnerable. Like we can be taken advantage of or hurt in some way. We feel out of control, not knowing where we should be going or what we should be doing. The darkness is not something that we value, but is a place of struggle, a place of chaos. In our lives, those can be moments when we are struggling with something, like our children, not sure how best to help them in their troubles that they're having. Could be troubles in schools. Could be how we nurture and help them feel confident and able to navigate the many pressures that they feel. Or it could be helping them make their decisions as adults out on their own. Young adults, youth, they're struggling to become independent as they face new decisions, as they face the high cost of living on their own, as they try to find jobs and a path that is meaningful, as they are perhaps placed in harm's way. Sometimes the struggles that we face are with relationships in our lives. That's where we find ourselves in the dark. And we seek how to move past those hurts and patterns of behavior that aren't healthy. We seek to love someone and be present with them without enabling poor choices and lifestyles. Many in our society struggle with finances, fearing they don't have enough to retire or struggling to pay off debts. We all have struggles. We all have these moments of wrestling in our lives, times that feel like chaos. We just want some clarity. We just want some answers. We need help figuring things out. And hopefully it comes before things get any worse. any more stressful for us. In actuality, we are longing to have light shed onto our darkness. We have to remember, though, that darkness isn't bad. Darkness does have value. In fact, I recently heard that we need to have complete darkness to aid with our sleeping. It allows us a deeper, more restful sleep. Our scriptures today help us to see this value of darkness, to know that there is nothing to fear in that darkness. Psalm 139, there we hear, even in the darkness, God is there. Even darkness is not dark to God. That's what the psalmist says. For God is present and able to be fully God. There is nothing, even in the darkness, that can stop the work of God. We hear a clear witness to this in the creation story. Even in the darkness, where there seems to be nothing at all, God still sees the possibilities. Even in the darkness, God is at work. God is creating and bringing forth light. The darkness is not bad. It holds possibilities. God is in fact pleased by what comes out of that darkness, a whole new creation. But in that chaos, in those struggles, we fear that void, that unseen, those what-ifs. Only as the story attests, God gives us signs. He gives us lights to mark the way. God's nightlights for us. He gives us so we know where we are. God brings forth light so that we can see. And it's true not just in the work of creation, but in our own lives. Looking at the book of Daniel, we find Daniel's story that he is in a challenging position. The king is on a rampage. He has threatened the lives of all the wise men because they're unable to not only interpret the king's dream, but they're unable to tell him what the dream was. One after another, they tell him that this is just too hard of a task. They tell him it's impossible. They just need a little bit more information from the king. Doesn't that sound like us in our times of struggle? We feel like we're in over our heads. We desperately want some clues. It all just feels like too much. But Daniel hears what's happening. And he comes forward and he goes to the king and he asks for a little more time. And then Daniel becomes a model for us. He shows us how to respond in times of struggle. What's he do? He goes to his friends and he asks them to join him in praying for God's help. He asked God to show him what he needed to know, and God did. That night in a vision, God reveals to Daniel what the king needed to hear. God sheds light on the mystery. For those that have been following along, our prayer bead for today is a black and white bead. Like the story of Daniel, it reminds us to turn to God in prayer when we are struggling. It invites us into a time of naming our struggles, naming the places where we need answers, direction, and then waiting. But not just any waiting, waiting with anticipation that God will shed light in the darkness. Waiting with trust that God will answer. Waiting with openness to see the signs that God puts before us. Let me ask, have you ever gone to bed at night asking God to shed light on something, asking for direction, for help, for inspiration, and then awake with at least a partial answer? Out of the darkness, in visions of the night, God has guided me through my many struggles. Now, of course, sometimes the answer doesn't happen overnight. That would be nice, though, wouldn't it? Sometimes it can be weeks. It can be months. It can be even years before we find our way forward out of our struggle. But our prayers aren't for an overnight answer. It might be our wish, but our prayer is to see the light. Our prayers are acts of hope. Our prayers are faith as we name our struggles, as we ask God for help, that God will bring forth light and understanding. The darkness of our lives, those struggles that we face, may feel overwhelming, but the good news is God is there. God is not overcome by darkness. Rather, God is at work even in the darkness, creating and bringing forth light for all to see. The black and white bead, bringing light out of darkness, inviting us into a time of naming our struggles before God. To help us comprehend, I invite you to turn in your hymnal to page 854. This morning we can do a responsive reading of this psalm that I mentioned earlier. We'll do the first 12 verses there. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways.
Even before words on my tongue,
you pursue me behind and before and lay your hand upon me.
Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is hard. I cannot attain it.
Whither shall I go from your spirit?
Whither shall I flee from your presence?
If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there.
If I take the wings of the morning, no one in those parts of the sea, even there it shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me.
If I say, let only darkness cover me, and the light about me be night.
Even the darkness is not dark to you, for the night is bright as the day, for darkness is the light of you.
Let these words be of comfort to you. Praise be to God. Amen.